Hare Krishna, we are live now.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances and glories to Creator, our glories to Bhagavat Krishna Prabhupada. Welcome to this week. Today is the first day of a new week, and we are very, very fortunate to have the Association of His Grace SRIVAS VANACARI Prabhu, who will be speaking to us from the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. So we expect devotees to pay close attention, and at the end, you may have your doubts cleared. We promise. So, Prabhuji, if you are ready, we'll put the verse on the screen and you may begin.
Yeah, go ahead and put on the screen.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Dandava Pranam.
BHAGAVATAM Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Wishing everybody a happy new year in Krishna consciousness.
Hare Krishna. Happy New Year.
So we have the verse on the screen. Narayana Namaskritya Narachaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nashtapraya Subhadrisu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Text 7. I think Chapter 19 is entitled The Appearance of Shukadeva Goswami. And we are taking Text 7. Iti vyavachitya sa pandaveyaha Prayo pavesham prati Vishnu padyam Dado mukundangri anyabhavo Muni varato mukta samasta shangaha Iti vyavachitya sa pandavyaya Prayo pavesham prati Vishnu padyam Dadyo mukundangrim anyabhavo Muni vrato mukta samasta sangaha Iti vyavachidya sapandaveya Prayo pavesham prati Vishnu padyam Dato mukundangrim anyabhavo Muni vrato mukta samasta sangaha. Word from word translation. Iti, thus, Vyavachidya, having decided, Saha, the king, Pandaveyaha, worthy descendant of the Pandavas, Praya Upavisham, for fasting until death, Prati toward, Vishnu Padyam, on the banks of the Ganges, emanating from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. The Dove gave himself up, Mukunda, Angrim, unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, Ananya, without deviation. Bhava, spirit, Munivrata, with the vows of a great sage. Mukta, liberated from Samasta, all kinds of Sangaha, association. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Lacy Bhakti Vedanta Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Thus the king, the worthy descendant of the Pandavas, decided once and for all, and sat on the Ganges bank to fast until death, and give himself up to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone is able to award liberation. So freeing himself from all kinds of associations and attachments, he accepted the vows of a sage. Purport. The water of the Ganges sanctifies all the three worlds, including the gods and the demigods, because it emanates from the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Lord Krishna is the fountainhead of the principle of Vishnu Tattva, and therefore shelter of his lotus feet can deliver one from all sins, including an offense committed by a king unto a Brahmana. Maharaj Parikshit therefore decided to meditate upon the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, who is Mukunda, or the giver of liberations of all description. The banks of the Ganges or the Yamuna give one a chance to remember the Lord continuously. Maharaj Parikshit freed himself from all sorts of material association and meditated upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And that is the way of liberation. To be free from all material association means to cease completely from committing any further sins. To meditate upon the lotus feet of the Lord means to become free from the effects of all previous sins. The conditions of the material world are so made that one has to commit sins willingly or unwillingly. And the best example is Maharaj Parikshit himself, who was a recognized sinless, pious king. But he also became a victim of an offense, even though he was ever unwilling to commit such a mistake. He was cursed also, but because he was a great devotee of the Lord, even such reverses of life became favorable. The principle is that one should not willingly commit any sin in his life and should constantly remember the lotus feet of the Lord without deviation. Only in such a mood will the Lord help the devotee make regular progress toward the path of liberation and thus attain the lotus feet of the Lord. Even if there are accidental sins committed by the devotee, the Lord saves the surrendered soul from all sins, as confirmed in all scriptures. Swapada mulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari parishaha vikarmaya chotpatitam kantanchit dunoti sarvam hirindi sanivishtaha. Om Gyana Tamridasya Gyanam Janashalakaya Chakshuram Malitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dalati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuktapada Kamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha, Sri Rupam Sagrajatam, Sahagana Ragunastam Vitam Tam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Samadutam, Parijana Sahitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padam, Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Itinamini. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Ashri Tatmani Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Itinamani Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Nauravani Pracharini Nirvasai Sasuyavadi Pasachane Satarini. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindubhyaya vachaparitanam pavinibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gaurati Namaha. Nityanando Fatutendur Vasunda Pranamalabaha Janavir Jivita Patir Krishna Prema Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Sribam Sachirananda Purvajaha Bhavam Mata Jagatrata Raktagora Kanevaraha. Andetam Harina Dvita the Charyam Bhakti Shamshanan Bhakta Vataram Itam Sham Advaita Charya Ashraye. Panchatattva Makam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Vataram Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Nama Pankajanabaya, Nama Pankajamaline, Nama Pankajanetraya, Namaste Pankajagraye. Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmana Hitaya, Cha Jagaritaya, Krishnaya, Govindaya, Namo Namaha. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dinabando, Jagatpate, Gopi Shagopi Takanta, Radha Kanta Namastate. Jayatam Sarato Pango Mama Mandir Gatima Salva Swapadam Bujo Radha Mandana Mohan Nivya Vendaranya Kalpa Drumada SRIMAD Radnat Garasan Hastanas Tau Srila Govinda Devo Christian Bisevia Manos Marami Srimam Rasa Rasaram Vivam Sivata Tatasti Takar Sanve Nuswanai Gopi Gopinata Sri Estunaha Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Bindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye David Krishna Mai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarvam Kanti Samohini Paraha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the translation again, thus the king, the worthy descendant of the Pandavas, decided once and for all, and sat on the Ganges bank to fast until death and give himself up to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone is able to award liberation. So, freeing himself from all kinds of associations and attachments, he accepted the vows of a great sage. Bukam karoti vachalam pangum lagaite grim yat karipatamahan vande Sri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akanda Manalakram Vyaptayina Chara Charam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So everyone is welcome to today's discussion from the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse 7. And before we proceed to speak something, for our own purification and probably for the benefit of the audience, we seek the blessings of all the exalted Vaishnavas present here on this platform so that we can execute this function of representing Srila Vyasadeva, the author of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. The In the verse and in the purport, there are many, many important points that are worth discussing. The king, by his behavior and determination, showed that he was a worthy descendant of the Pandavas. Therefore, he decided to sit on the banks of the Ganges and fast till night. And as a great devotee of the Lord, he took shelter of the bank of the Ganges in order to give up himself to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone awards liberation. In other words, the waters of the Ganges is emanating from the lotus feet of the Lord. Is directly connected to the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, he took shelter of the Ganges in order to take full shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, by doing so, he freed himself from all kinds of associations and attachments. Lord Krishna is the fountainhead of the principle of the Vishnu Tattva. Therefore, shelter of his lotus feet can deliver one from all sins, including offenses committed by a great king unto a Brahmana. Parikshit Maharaj decided to meditate upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who is known as Mukunda, the giver of liberation, at the last moment of his life. The banks of the Ganges on the Yamuna give one a chance to remember the Lord continuously. Maharaj Parikshit freed himself from all sorts of material associations and meditated upon the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. To meditate upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna means to become free from the effects of all previous sins. The conditions of this world are so made that one has to commit sins willingly or unwillingly. Parikshit Maharaj became a victim of an offense, even though he was unwilling to commit such a mistake. But even though he was cursed, but as a great devotee of the Lord, even such reverses of life became favorable. So there are many points from both the text and the purport which are worth our discussion. But for a time constraint, due to time constraints, we cannot discuss all these wonderful points. So we shall restrict ourselves to a few points. We shall focus on a few points. For the purpose of our discussion. So when the king received the news of his imminent death, he took a very revolutionary decision. He immediately renounced his kingdom. He gave up his family. He gave up his opulence. He gave up everything else that mattered in life. And he immediately took shelter of the great river the river Ganges. Srila Prabhupada mentions that the river Ganges and the river Yamuna, they facilitate the remembrance of the Lord. When Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, the river Yamuna was his playground. In fact, the whole of Vrindavan was his playground. He sported in the waters of the Yamuna with his cowherd boyfriends, as well as with the gopis. So it is said that the Yamuna was very fortunate. Yamuna was always ecstatic because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was sporting in her waters. So therefore, the Yamuna River feels great fortune. Yamuna feels much more fortunate than the Ganga. In fact, some acharyas say that the Ganga, even though he is coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, he was feeling that the Lord does not sport in her waters and does not make her feel great. And that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he appeared in Navadvip. Navadvip is on the banks of the Ganga. 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya appeared on the banks of Navadvip, and he performed numerous pastimes along the banks of Ganga. And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he made the Ganga happy. He made the Ganga ecstatic. He made the Ganga proud because he played on the banks of the Ganga. And along with his dear devotees, they played in the waters of the Ganga. So, seeing the Ganga, seeing the Yamuna reminds us of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's a fact, when you go to Vrindavan, and as soon as you sight the river Yamuna, immediately you remember Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's activities with his devotees in the Yamuna. In the same way, when you come to Bengal, you come to Navadvip, Mayapur, and as soon as you see the Ganga, you remember Lord Chaitanya and his devotees performing such wonderful pastimes. So by remembering these pastimes, one becomes purified. By remembering these pastimes, one becomes connected to the lotus feet of the Lord. So, no wonder that Parikshit Maharaj, when he received the news of his imminent death, he took shelter of the great river, the Ganga. Why did the king choose to sit on the banks of the Ganga to fast till death and not some other place? Because he understood the sanctity of the Ganges. He also understood that because this Ganga is very, very pure and very wonderful, it attracts great souls. It is the place of pilgrimage for exalted personalities. So King Parikshit, he had a question in his mind. He had a desire in his heart. And the best person who could answer that question are the great sages. And so he chose to sit on the banks of the Ganga because it is a place for the pilgrimage of sacred souls. So definitely he will come across an exalted soul who would answer the question of his mind, who would fulfill the desire of his heart. And surely, when the king took his seat on the banks of the Ganga, news spread throughout the universe that the emperor of the world, Parikshit Maharaj, had been cursed to leave the world. And therefore, he was sitting on the banks of the Ganga, preparing to leave the world. And as the news spread, different sages, different munis, different brahmanas, different yogis, all manners of spiritualists, all assembled on the banks of the Ganga to witness the passing away of such an exalted personality as Parikshit Maharaj. So, death is sure. For Parikshit Maharaj, he was very fortunate that he knew how many more days he had to live. And therefore, he took such a revolutionary decision to give up his kingdom, to give up everything that mattered in life, only to sit on the banks of the Ganga in order to pass on. In our situation, we are not sure. In our situation, nobody knows how long he's going to live. Just as we were hit with the news of the passing of one of our great supporters in Togo, Mr. Kumar Samnani. When I was in Togo in, I think, October last year, we visited him and we had a number of discussions. He's always very receptive to devotees. He's one of the major contributors to the pictures of the temple in Togo, the building, the property. He's one of the trustees of the building in Togo. And he's such a charitable man. He's very wealthy and charitable also. When we met, there was no sign that he was going to leave so soon. And so when the news came yesterday or day before yesterday, that Mr. Kumar, he looked very healthy. He looked very strong when we were with him in October. Come January, he's gone. Parikshit Maharaj, he was so fortunate that he was given 7 days to prepare. And so immediately he sat on the banks of the Ganga. He took association of the banks of Ganga and attracted many saintly people who came to give him more association. In a case of an ordinary living entity, no one knows when this is going to happen. So Parikshit Maharaj is certain example for us that we should be prepared to meet imminent death. And by his action, he sets the example what a devotee should do at the time of death is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, is to take shelter of the devotees of the Lord, is to take shelter of remembering the pastimes of the Lord, is to take shelter of Krishna Katha, Hare Katha. In fact, it is mentioned that when the great sages, yogis, munis, they all gathered around the king on the banks of the Ganga, the king posed a question, and he said, "O trustworthy Brahmanas, I asked you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die." That was the question Parikshit Maharaj placed before the Brahmanas, the sages, the yogis. What is the duty of a man who is about to die? We are all in such a situation because actually nobody knows when he will die. So Shukadeva Goswami glorified this question. Shukadeva Goswami said, "Varyam yasate prashna kritalokam hitam dripa atmavit samata pumsham shotavyadishu yat pri yat paraha." My dear king, your question is very glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. And the answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing. And it is approved by all transcendentalists. So, such a revolutionary question was asked by a great and exalted devotee who comes from such a high spiritual heritage. Parikshit Maharaj is a descendant of the Pandavas. He is the grandson of the Pandavas. He is the son of Abhimanyu and Uttara. And he was only surviving male of the Pandavas. And we know how dear the Pandavas are to Lord Krishna. We know how intimate the Pandavas are with Lord Krishna. It is mentioned that the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought simply to enthrone the Pandavas as the kings of the world. And even though Krishna promised not to fight in that battle because it was a war between relatives, it was a war between cousins, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. But Krishna agreed to become the charioteer of Arjuna. So even though Krishna said he was not going to pick up weapons and fight, he was not going to participate in the war, but simply by supporting Arjuna as his driver, by driving Arjuna's chariot, Krishna, as Hirishikesh, the master of the senses, was going to be directing Arjuna's senses. And by directing Arjuna's senses, Arjuna will emerge victorious. That calculation, the Kauravas did not make. In fact, Dhritarashtra was thinking that because he has 100 children and the Pandavas were only 5, he was thinking they outnumber, the Kauravas outnumber the Pandavas, and therefore he was going to emerge victorious. And that is why he asked the question to Sanjaya, what did they do? What did my children and the children of Pandu, what did they do when they assembled on the holy field of Kurukshetra? So, but the fact that Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas strength outweighed the Kauravas' strength. Actually, it is said that each Pandava was worth the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra. So even though Dhritarashtra was calculating the number of children, his number of children against that of the Pandavas, but his mathematics was not right. Each Pandava was worth 100 sons, even more than 100 sons. And then what is more exciting is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, because his intimacy with the Pandavas, was sitting on Arjuna's chariot as the driver. And if God is your driver, what do you lose? If God is your driver, you have every possibility, every opportunity to emerge victorious, because the Lord of the universe is directing your affairs. The Lord of the universe is directing your chariot. So because of the intimacy between Lord Krishna and the Pandavas, Lord Krishna accepted to become Arjuna's charioteer. And just by accepting that position, the Pandavas emerged victorious. And we see, under very difficult circumstances, the Supreme Personality of Godhead would reveal a specific method to overcome such challenges. And because of his guidance, the Pandavas emerged victorious. So Parikshit Maharaj is coming from that lineage. Parikshit Maharaj has that heritage, a very exalted heritage. He is a grandson of these powerful, great devotees of Krishna who enjoyed the Lord's association very much. And so because of his exalted spiritual heritage, he took such a decision to take shelter of the Ganga in order to achieve his goal of life, going back home, back to Godhead. And as soon as exalted personalities came around him, he immediately asked a question. He asked a glorious question. What is the duty of a man who is about to die? Parikshit Maharaj wanted to absorb his mind completely in Krishna, because by such absorption, he would become purified. He would become oblivious of impending death. The curse was he will be killed by Tusker, a snake bird that will come and bite him. So therefore, Parikshit Maharaj wanted to be absorbed in thinking of Krishna, in hearing about Krishna, and discussing about Krishna. He was so absorbed in those activities that he will not even see the snake bird. He will not know when the snake bird comes to bite him. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Jarama Karma Chamendi Byum. Ivam Yovetita Tuataha, Tiakto de Hampuna Jarama, na itimam es. It is so Arjuna, that anyone who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance, activities, does not, upon leaving his body, comes back to this material world. Parikshit Maharaj was conversant with this instruction of Lord Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj, he asked the question, what is the duty of a man who is about to die? And the obvious answer that came from Shukadeva Goswami was equally a revolutionary answer. Parikshit Maharaj asked a revolutionary question, and he received a revolutionary answer. Shukadeva Goswami said, Antakale tu Purusha agate gata sadhava. My dear king, at the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough to be unafraid of death. One must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it, and all desires thereof. So that's exactly what happened. Parikshit Maharaj gave up his beautiful wife and children, gave up his kingdom, gave up his uplands, all accoutrements associated with the royal order, he gave them up. And now he's sitting almost naked on the banks of the river Ganga, so that he could be purified and his life made perfect. It is said that the river Ganga is flowing from the lotus feet of Vishnu. The pastime of the flow of the river Ganga into this universe is described in the 8th canto of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. When Bali Maharaj was performing his sacrifices, Jagya, Lord Krishna appeared as Vamanadev, a dwarf incarnation. Vamana means dwarf incarnation. And he begged for 3 steps of land. And Bali Maharaj, being the owner, had conquered the demigods and was now actually had replaced Indra. He had taken over the heavenly planet and was controlling the whole universe, so to speak. So Bali Maharaj was thinking, this small boy, Vamanadev, has come to the king of the whole universe and is asking for 3 steps. And besides that, he's just a dwarf. What is the use? So Bali Maharaj actually practically insulted Vamanadev. He said, you are not intelligent. You're not wise. If you go to the king, you should ask for a big charity, big donation. You don't ask for 3 steps of land when your legs are just so small. Of course, his guru, Sukracharya, due to his advancement in knowledge, he understood that this short boy, Vamanadev, is Lord Narayan, and he had come to take away the universe from Bali and offer it back to the demigods. So he was advising Bali not to mind him. But Bali, being also a descendant of Prahlad Maharaj, Bali is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. And so that devotional nature was in him. So he took up his Kamandalu water container, poured water on the ground, and said, Tatastu, take your 3 steps as you wish. Immediately, Vamanadev began to expand. His first step covered the lower planetary systems, including the Earth planet. His second step covered all the heavenly planets. And there was no place for the 3rd step. So he asked Bali Maharaj, you promised me 3 steps. I've only taken 2 steps. Where do I place my 3rd step? And Bali, being a devotee, he said, place it on my head. So it is said that the 2nd step, the toe of Vamanadev pierced the universe, pierced the universal covering, and brought in the water from the causal ocean. So the water of the Ganga is actually coming from the causal ocean, which is a spiritual water. So to live one's body in the association of Ganga is considered a very wonderful achievement. And Parikshit Maharaj is sitting on the banks of the Ganga, waiting for Taskar to come to bite him. And the waters of the Ganga are as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it's emanating from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is said that Mukunda Angri, the lotus feet of the Lord, give shelter to the devotees. Mukunda means one who gives liberation. In the Mukunda Malastrota, it is mentioned, Jayati, Jayati, Deva Deva Kinandana So, Jayati, Jayati, Krishna Vrishni Vamsa Pradipaha, Jayati, Jayati, Mega Shamalam Kamalam Go, Jayati, Jayati, Pritivara Mukundam. So Mukunda is a giver of liberation. Mukunda, he diminishes the troubles of the earth. He reduces the trouble of the earth. And he awards liberation to devotees. He actually awards liberation to anyone who takes shelter of his lotus feet. So we have Mukunda Angrim. So Parikshit Maharaj is fully aware of the potency of the Ganga, because he knows that is coming from the lotus feet of Krishna, and therefore, at the last moment of his life, he took shelter of Mukunda. And what is more, he had an association of great devotees like Shukadev Goswami, who for 7 days and 7 nights narrated SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, narrated the glories of the Lord to the hearing of Parikshit Maharaj. And just by hearing the narrations of the pastimes of Krishna, which were very purifying, Parikshit Maharaj achieved the desire of his heart, which is going back home, back to Godhead. In fact, it is said, just by hearing the narrations from Shukadev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj became so absorbed in hearing that he did not even know when the snake bird came to bite him. He did not even know when he left his body. He did not even know the moment he attained perfection. So therefore, all of us, we are on the verge of death. We don't even know when it's going to happen. So this hearing is very important. And that is the purpose of these ears. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya said that the purpose of the ears is to drink the nectar, the nectar of the holy names, the nectar of the pastimes, the nectar of the glories. Amritam Vahini, Amritam Tarangini. The nectar of the pastimes of the Lord are meant to be drunk with the 2 ears. And one who takes advantage of drinking this nectar, he can attain immortality. He can rise above death. But Lord Chaitanya also said, but one who does not utilize his ears in drinking this Amrita Tangerine, his ear is no better than a hole in a broken conch shell. So these ears that Krishna has given us are actually meant for hearing the pastimes of the Lord. And the more we hear, the more we shall be fearless about death. Just as Parikshit Maharaj heard from Shukadev Goswami continuously for 7 days and 7 nights, and he did not even know when he left his body. So Parikshit Maharaj has set an example. He has set such a high example for us to follow. And every one of us, we have to increase our hearing. We have to increase our chanting. We have to increase our devotional service as the years come by. In fact, it is said that the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun reduces everyone's life, except those who are engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, except those who are constantly hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their life is not decreased by the rising and setting of the sun. Actually, they are prolonging their lives. They're creating an eternal life by this constant hearing. And that is what Parikshit Maharaj demonstrated at the end of his life by hearing from Shukadev Goswami. He attained that rare place, Parampadam, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, if we follow that example of hearing and hearing and hearing, the result will be that we shall attain the same destination as Parikshit Maharaj. Thank you very much. It's already 1 hour. So maybe there are some comments or questions. In India is 9:30 now, p.m. So and there are some comments or questions. We shall try to say something more. If there are no comments or questions, we call it a day.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for such a wonderful class. Like you indicated before you spoke, and even after you read the translation and the purport, there were so many important things discussed, but due to time constraint, as you indicated, you said you're going to limit the discussion to few topics. And even the few topics you discussed, if time allows us, we will not leave this platform till maybe next 2 days. There is so much, and I'm very much worried, but I will share my worry later on, but I will let devotees ask their question. Kusha Prabhu, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna, powerful Krishna, Happy New Year.
You say you are in India.
Yes.
You are now in transcendental situation. Bless us all. My question is on the issue of the sun's rising and setting. It reduces the lifespan of all except those who hear the word of the scripture.
Yes.
So my question is that when the sun rises and sets, does it only spare devotees' life? What about other faiths, people of other faiths who are not studying the Vedic scripture? Does the setting and rising of the sun also spare them and don't decrease their life? Or it's only devotees?
Well, when we say devotee, we mean anyone who is worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anyone who is engaged in the 9 processes of bhakti. Prahlad Maharaj gave us the 9 processes, beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. So anyone who is engaged in these 9 processes of bhakti is not affected by the rising and setting of the sun. But if one is not connected to the 9 processes of bhakti, then the rising of the sun and setting takes away his lifespan. Actually, as devotees with material bodies, we are also affected by time because the body is material, the body is made of matter, and so it is affected by time. But the glory of hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that we are accumulating great credits, spiritual credits, that would allow us to enter into the spiritual atmosphere. That would allow us to go back to Godhead. And once you go back to Godhead, you are into eternity. So when we say that the rising of the sun and the setting does not diminish the life of a devotee, it means that the rising of the sun allows the devotee to establish his eternality of existence by hearing. So if one is not hearing, one is not connected to the process of hearing, then there is no hope of eternity. So anyone, it doesn't matter where you belong, if you are connected to these 9 processes, then it means you are also accumulating such spiritual credits that will allow you eternal life. So it's not only the Vedic literatures, but any person who is connected to the 9 processes. Of course, the Vedic literature are very specific. You see, there are many varieties of scriptures in this world, but some scriptures are not specific. Some scriptures they don't give direct instructions. They don't give clear instructions how to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't even present the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in order to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you need to know him. You need to know the personality who you are serving. To establish our loving relationship with Krishna, we must know who is God, where is God, how do we please him. Unfortunately, some scriptures have no idea who that God is. They have no idea the form of God. And therefore, their love for God is vague. You cannot love somebody you don't know. It's impossible. You cannot love. If somebody comes and says, oh, I have a very beautiful daughter, I want you to love her. You will first say, let me see the picture of that girl. Or somebody comes and says, I have a very handsome son, I want you to marry her. The girl will say, let me have a picture of that son. Let me see him first. So the Vedic scriptures are very specific. The Vedic scriptures, they offer who is God, the personality of the Supreme Person. And so it makes it much easier to know who God is and develop love for him. That is the difference between the Vedic scriptures and all other scriptures. The idea is of God is very vague in the Holy Quran, in the Holy Bible, very vague. So therefore, how can they develop love of God? Because they don't even know who God is. They have no idea who God is. But the Vedic scriptures are very, very specific, very clear. This is God. Krishna stood Bhagavan, so I am.
Thank you.
That is the issue.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the beautiful answer to Kusha Prabhu's question. But Advaita Krishna Prabhu has his hand up, but before we go to him, there is a short and brief question in the chat room from one of the audiences, Zoom user. That's his or her name, I don't know who it is. But the question is, how does this apply if a person is deaf, non-hearing? In other words, you were saying, and the scriptures are saying it, that Shravanam, Kirtanam, I mean, the basic and the most important aspect of devotional service is hearing. So if someone is deaf and cannot hear, what is such a person's fate or situation? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Interesting. Thank you for that question. I've never asked it. Actually, there is no disadvantage in Krishna consciousness. Even the deaf and dumb, even the blind, they can all benefit from Krishna consciousness. In fact, many years ago, we had one god brother in Mumbai who was deaf and dumb, but he was preaching. He became Krishna conscious. He became a wonderful preacher, and he became a preacher. He also started preaching to the deaf and dumb. So Krishna consciousness is not limited to just hearing. The 9 processes that Prahlad Maharaj gave us covers everyone. Of course, Shravanam is the first principle, hearing. But if one cannot hear, one can still engage in some different activity. There are 9 processes, and only one is related to the ear, hearing. One can still read that we've got scriptures now written in a braille language. Those who cannot hear, they can still read the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. And by reading, they're also chanting. Prabhupada said, when we read, that is also considered chanting. And in fact, this devotee, I met him before, he used to chant japa. He used to chant japa in the mind. Japa can be chanted in the mind. Actually, he said there are 3 levels of chanting. Manasha, japa, and then japa, and then kirtan. These are the 3 ways to chant the Maha Mantra. In fact, for the very advanced devotees, like Haridas Thakur, he used to chant 64 rounds of Manasa japa. Then he would chant 64 rounds of japa. Then he would chant loud kirtan, 64 rounds. That was his modus operandi. Every day, he would chant 192 rounds, 300,000 names a day. The first 100,000 will be Manasha Japa. He would chant silently. And that the deaf and dumb can do. But besides that, they can also do other services. They can see the deities, they can take prasadam, they can clean the temple, they can do many things in relation to the service of the Lord. So one who is deaf and dumb can still practice Krishna consciousness. He's only deprived of the ability to hear, but he can see, he can smell, he can taste, and he can feel. The 5 knowledge acquiring senses, which begins with the ear, hearing, seeing, sight, tasting, tongue, feeling, skin, and what is the 4th one? So he can employ those other senses in relation to devotional service, and he will achieve the same result, just as one who is hearing. So there is no one is deprived of the ability to gain spiritual advancement, even though one may be deaf. We have such great speakers on the platform here. Ishwara Prabhu is here, and Advaita Acharya Prabhu is here. So maybe they can make a contribution towards this particular question.
Well, Advaita Krishna Prabhu, you may unmute. You already had your hand up. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. I'm sorry about my look. I'm just not too well. Look like
Sorry.
Yeah. So I was very happy. Monday is my only day I'm free. So in the evening. So yes. So thank you very much, all the devotees. Thank you very much, Srivas Prabhu. Thank you, Ishwara Prabhu, and all the other Vaishnavas who are on this platform. First, I want to say something, if I may, with the permission of my friends and seniors here, is that I really appreciate this platform of Bhagavatam discussions that is going on in West Africa. And the time I was giving the discussion, Prabhu asked me a question about how did Krishna establish dharma? Didn't seem like the gate. That was a nice question. But I've been reflecting on it, and yesterday also I gave a talk at the temple in Phoenix about this. And actually, now thinking about what Kusha Prabhu also asked Srivas Prabhu and answered very nicely, that we have to repetitively, regularly, incessantly hear about the glorification of Krishna, and that's the dharma that Krishna established for us in the SRIMAD Bhagavatam. And the level of discourse in our West African yatras, with all the senior Vaishnavas speaking so nicely and all the scrutinizing questions, is actually very heartwarming. Very, very heartwarming. It's very nice. And I will humbly make a very humble plea to all of you to please encourage all the devotees we know in West Africa, all the wonderful Vaishnavas are there to just join this platform. Because as life progresses in so many diverse ways, and not many of us live in temples, and Bhagavatam classes in the morning are not so really available for most of us because they have to attend to family responsibilities, jobs and everything. But this is a wonderful opportunity. This is very, very nice, because I see no other way of really connecting to this level of meditation on the philosophy, the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, and understanding Krishna Katha, that on top of all of that is association with all of us together. So this is my humble comment. This is so important. And it does bring a gradual change in consciousness. And if we don't catch that train of Srimad Bhagavatam study now, then when will we? When are we likely to catch that train? Because it's moving, because time is not on our side. So we have to jump, and we have to help everyone else to jump on that. And it will take us beyond. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Advaita Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for such a beautiful comment. So we have to encourage more and more devotees to participate. This daily hearing is our food, it's our nourishment. If we are not hearing constantly, how are we going to grow spiritually? Pariksit Maharaj has set the stage, he has set the example that time will catch up with us. And the only way we can be on the safe side is this regular hearing. So thank you for that comment. Ishwara Prabhu, what do you say about the death and dump?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Good to see you again. We miss you in Vrindavan.
Hare Krishna. I'm missing Vrindavan as well. This morning I saw Pavitra in Mayapur, and he's telling me the Vrindavan has become too cold. He ran away from Vrindavan.
Yeah, he ran away from the cold. It's too cold. Just you can see the way I'm dressing up here. Yes, so deaf and dumb. Very good. Actually, we all deaf and dumb. It's not that some persons are deaf and dumb, and because we are deaf and dumb, because we always speaking nonsense. We say everything except what is Krishna conscious. So we have, the only person in this world who's not deaf and dumb is somebody who's constantly, hearing Harikatha or speaking Harikatha. That's the only person who's not deaf and dumb. Otherwise, we're all deaf and dumb. Because we speak, we are full of talking all kind of nonsense. That's what we do there, Prajapa, But someone who's actually physically deaf and dumb, as we, in a literary way, as such a person is in the environment of devotional service, such person is actually in a very advantageous than all of us who claim to be hearing and speaking. Actually, we have many of those persons who engage in devotional service. Like, here in our temple here in Vrindavan, Krishna Bharamande, there's one fellow. The guy is is deaf and dumb, but the guy he's the toilet cleaner. This fellow is so absorbing it. All he does is he clean the toilet. We have 2 nice toilets in Krishna Bharam temple in Vrindavan. But this guy is like he cannot say anything to anybody. Just it's like doing the way these deaf people speak. But it's the bathroom of the temple is so clean like anything. It's actually our Vrindavan temple is the cleanest bathroom in all of Vrindavan. It's always very shiny and everything. And this guy, morning and evening, 2 or 3 times a day, he's cleaning the bathroom constantly. So a person can think that, oh, it's like cleaning the bathroom considered to be something low service, low, but we have to remember that Srila Gokusha Das Babaji Maharaj, when he wanted to get away from the materialistic people, what did he do? He went to stay in the bathroom, he went to stay in the toilet.
Yes.
Actually, he went to stay in the public toilet. And when we talk about public toilet in Vrindavan, I mean, in India, you cannot just imagine it. That's why he said that I'd rather stay here than be in the association of materialistic people. He said the stench of materialistic people is much more unbearable than for me, than here. So it's not disadvantageous at all if someone is so-called deaf and dumb. There have been so many great devotees, so many wonderful devotees who have such a disability of not physically being able to hear or be able to speak. But actually they do hear. Actually, it's not they don't hear, but it's just that they just can't speak. But within the heart, or blind person. I mean, Bivamangal Thakur was blind. Bivamangal Thakur, he blinded himself because he was a Brahmana before, and then he fell from his position. Then he was attracted to a prostitute, and all that. And even though after he came to his senses, that he should have been spending his time trying to understand God or trying to search for God than trying to search for a prostitute. After he came to his senses, and he was going to Vrindavan, and as he was going, he again became attracted when he saw the wife of a Brahmin. He again became attracted, and then, so he followed this lady to her house, and then the house, then the woman told her husband that, oh, this sadhu has been following her. What does he want? So the Brahmanas say, oh, dear sadhu, what do you want? Because they're ready to fulfill whatever is desired. They say, what do you want? He said, oh, I just want to be alone with your wife. So the Brahman said, okay, good. She can do whatever, she can render whatever service you want. So he allowed her to be alone. But so what Brahmanga Thakur did, he said, please, Mataji, give me your 2 earpins. Give me your 2 earpins. But she didn't know what does he want my earpin? What does he want that? So anyway, she took out her earpins and gave it to Brahmanga Thakur. And then Brahmanga Thakur, he took these 2 earpins. What did he do? He plucked out his eye, put it to, blinded himself. He said, this eye is my enemy. So therefore, I'm free from this. And then he started going to Vrindavan as a blind man. Then, as he was going to Vrindavan, what his meditation? His constant meditation was about Krishna. So much so that Krishna himself came and started taking him by hand to Vrindavan. And then there's a whole dialogue between Krishna and Brahmanga Thakur. There's a whole dialogue. And then one time, as they were playing, they're actually playing, they are playing. And the Brahmanga Thakur is, he used to sing so many wonderful verses. So and then one time, Krishna slipped out of his hand. Krishna slipped out of his hand. So Brahmanga Thakur prayed, said that, oh, my dear Krishna, you may slip out of my hand, but you can never slip out of my heart. You can never slip out of my heart. So, that is the thing. So it's not, the disability is not really advantage. It's not really disadvantage, actually. For the pure devotees, for the sincere devotees, it is advantageous for the sincere devotees.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful comment. I think some other devotees have some questions. Time is running out. Yes.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the contributions. His Grace Advaita Krishna Prabhu and Ishara Prabhu. Salika Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, His Grace, I am SRIVAS VANACARI. Please accept my respectful
Jai,
obeisance.
all glories to Gurudev, glories to Prabhupada. Happy New Year, Salika Prabhu.
Happy New Year to you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Pray for us in the Holy Dam, that one day
Well,
we might have the
we will
punya.
try. We will try.
I just want to make a little comment on the beautiful question that was asked by the last questionnaire about the deaf. Sorry, my camera has been misbehaving since yesterday. I don't know what is wrong with the camera. So if it is blunting off and on, don't mind it. It's a new development since yesterday started. So I've been trying to find a solution to it. Well, it's a beautiful question. And this is a thoughtful question, and people have asked this question also in the past. There is no direct reference to the scriptures. There's only one reference that is known, which is in relation with the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur asked Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how can the trees, the plants benefited from the chanting of the holy name? And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expresses that the powerful potency of the holy name can penetrate even for those who are plants in the body of a plant and trees. What you talk of animals and human beings, that is the only direct reference that I've had and read through. But the fact also is that from our material experience, we understand that there is an external and internal senses. The senses that we see physically are just a replica of what is inside. Actually, what we hear with is not this physical ear that we have. The ear is actually inside. And that is why someone is blind, he can still see because it uses the inner eye. So somebody is physically deaf, also hears from the inside. So there is no limitation to hearing or seeing the Lord or hearing the name of the Lord if one is physically impaired, because the real senses are not external. They're just a physical representation of what is inside. So one cannot hear externally, can still hear internally if he chants sincerely. And that is the experience that we've gathered. And like I said, the only reference to the scriptures is that statement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that the potency of the holy name is so powerful that it can penetrate anything. What you talk of a person who is in the higher body of a living entity, in the human form of life. So that's what I wanted to contribute to the question.
Thank you. Wonderful contribution. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Sarika Prabhu. I had a question, but I think I will suspend my question for now and then follow up with what is being discussed now. And that is, especially in the US here, there is this issue of when you go to almost any classroom in any school, the desks are designed for right-handed people.
Mm.
And it makes it very, very obscure for left-handed people to write on such boards. And so left-handed people have been complaining. And so in some classrooms, they have desks specifically designed for left-handed people. Now, not everyone is able to use his inner ears to hear. And so not everyone is able to use his or her inner eyes to see. We only use our external senses to see, to hear, to touch. And so we see in most cases when prominent people are making speeches, they have people who use like lip language or sign language so that those who cannot hear can understand what the president is saying. So I don't know if ISKCON is also thinking of doing something like that to help devotees who are physically deaf. Those who are blind, like you, Prabhuji, you mentioned, they have this Braille language. I don't know if we are attempting to write some of our books in a Braille language to help devotees who are blind. And I know Bhaktivedanta Maharaj used to say that some devotees actually pray to Krishna that they come into this world disabled. And of course, we know disability is not inability. So somebody may be disabled in one way, but that is not a disability if one knows how to utilize whatever he or she has. But for someone to be physically blind, physically deaf, what are we as a movement trying to do to help such people? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. The fact is, when one is disabled in one of the senses, it is naturally found out that he is empowered in one of the other senses. For instance, somebody who is blind, he becomes much more sensitive. Blind men are very sensitive. So when one is disabled in some area, he gains tremendous empowerment in one of the senses. And so, even though it might appear that he's disabled in one area, but he is compensated in some other area that helps him to still benefit from the environment. So that is also there. But I remember that many years ago, as I mentioned, there was a devotee in Mumbai who was preaching, and there was some arrangement for him to develop that department of presenting literatures for the blind, for the deaf, and for all those disabled people. But as of now, I don't know how far that department has developed. Once you brought it up, maybe we have to contact the BBT department in Bombay to find out whether there is anything going on right now in this line of trying to help the disabled to connect with Krishna consciousness. But it is an important department because a certain percentage of the world population are disabled in one way or the other. And so they should not be left out in Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So there must be some arrangement to benefit them. So we will find out from the BBT Mumbai what is the latest development in this direction, because it was there many years back.
Yeah, because there was this guy, Stephen Hawkins. I mean, he was like probably the only person who has come very close to Einstein. He was a very powerful physicist, but he was disabled. But there was a special machine designed for him that as he types, it comes out as speech. And he's helped the world in so many tremendous ways that if that particular guy did not speak what he spoke, the world would have been left in a very big darkness. So I like you say, and I believe if ISKCON can attempt to do something like that, we do not know the amount of information somebody has in his head or her head, but there is this barrier that he or she is unable to give them out. But if we make room for such an opportunity, then those information could be given out for the betterment of the world in general. So, but the question I had was that I was almost quick to reprimand or scold Lord Brahma which is crazy to think about. That little Sahadev sitting here is prepared to scold Lord Brahma. I know, I'm sure we all know from the scriptures how the gopis were reprimanding Lord Brahma for making the eyelids to blink so that they do not see Krishna, even for a flash of a second. I am nowhere close to be making such a remark about Lord Brahma. But my concern is, why would Lord Brahma make death so painful and so difficult? I mean, I read this from the scriptures, like you said, those who are devotees are not afraid of death. And I'm trying to be a devotee, so I pretended not to be afraid of death. But I still am. I'm very much afraid of death. And there are so many reasons why I'm afraid of death, because I do not know where my next destination is going to be. But if we compare the way the earthly beings die to that of other higher beings in the heavenly planets die, it's like Lord Brahma is not being fair. You know, we go through so much pain. And the most difficult of it all is how Krishna allowed Srila Prabhupada to leave his body in such a painful manner. I did not see that with my physical eyes, but with my physical eyes, I saw how Bhaktivedanta Maharaj left his body. It's so painful, so painful. And it just beats my mind. Why would Lord Brahma make the dying process so difficult for us, whereas that is not the same for other beings in higher domain? But of course, nobody is Lord Brahma, so nobody may be able to answer exactly. But it's a concern for me that I see deaths almost, or at least every week I'll see death. And I was thinking that seeing so many deaths, I'll become immune, but I never have. And I don't think I will ever become immune to the pains of seeing somebody die. So I don't know, Prabhu, if you have something to share on this.
Well, it's interesting, a very interesting question. The pains of death, why Brahma allows the living entity to go through such excruciating pain at the moment of death. Well, the scriptures say that death can also be defined as samadhi. Samadhi means absorbing one's mind in the thoughts of Krishna, thoughts of God. And by that absorption, that's what Parikshit Maharaj did. By such absorption, one does not experience the pains of death. In fact, in the 6th canto of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, Dadichi Muni, a very powerful sage, was requested by the demigods to give his bones. Actually, Lord Vishnu directed the demigods to go to Dadichi Muni to ask for his bones, and with the bones of Dadichi Muni, the thunderbolt could be manufactured. And with that thunderbolt, the great demon Vritrasur could be killed. He was devastating. He was wrecking the armies of the demigods. And the only way to eliminate him was to use the thunderbolt. And the thunderbolt could be manufactured from the bones of a very experienced sage like Dadichi Muni. So the Vishnu asked the demigods to go to Dadichi Muni to ask for his bones. So the demigods, they went to Dadichi Muni and they requested it for his bones. And the Dicimuni told them, don't you know the pains of death? Coming to ask me for my bones means that you want me to die. Don't you understand the pains of death? So there was some exchange between the demigods and the Dicimuni. But eventually, the Dicimuni gave his bones. The Dicimuni, he went into samadhi, withdrew the senses into the mind into the intelligence into the ego, and the ego into the soul. And he left his body. So there is a process by which one can actually withdraw from the body and will not experience the pains of death. And that is described as samadhi, samadhina. So, great sages, saintly people, they practice this samadhi and they die without experiencing any pain. And that's exactly what happened to Parikshit Maharaj. But in the case of Srila Prabhupada, in the case of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, we mustn't forget that because they had accepted many, many disciples, and they had to carry the burden of all of the disciples. So even though Srila Prabhupada was absorbed in speaking Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada was completely in samadhi. From our perspective, we could see that Srila Prabhupada was going through some pain because for a whole month he did not eat anything. His skin was attached to his bones and was very painful. But because he was absorbed in speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, we can also understand he was absorbed in samadhi, and therefore, from his perspective, he was not feeling any pain. Because one who is in pain cannot speak Bhagavatam, cannot. But Prabhupada spoke Bhagavatam to the very end of his life. But because these great personalities, they accepted many disciples, and some disciples were not following, and they had to carry all of that reactions on their heads. They had to show, they had to display some amount of suffering at the end. But actually, they were in samadhi. So samadhi is an alternative to that. And the process of bhakti, process of yoga, is actually meant to come to this level of samadhi. Parikshit Maharaj, he was so absorbed in hearing, he was so absorbed in Krishna Katha, Hari Katha, that he did not even know when the snake bird bit him. So it is possible to avoid this pain by increasing our Krishna consciousness. We will feel so blissful in the heart, so blissful in the mind, that physical pain becomes negligible. And Srila Prabhupada demonstrated that by speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to the very end. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj also demonstrated that by his absorption in Krishna consciousness to the end. But they have to display this pain to teach us that to take the responsibility of other souls, one has to go through this pain. So there is a way out, and that is samadhi. Samadhi is the process by which one can leave this world very peacefully, very ecstatically. Actually, it is said that death is amrita. Death is bliss for those who are very advanced in Krishna consciousness, who are very advanced in the yoga practice. Death is welcomed. But those who are not advanced, death is fearful. So it is possible to transcend death. It is possible to experience samadhi at a point of death. And as you said, the demigods, they don't go through such excruciating pain. So it's also possible for we earthly beings to avoid, to bypass that pain if we become sufficiently Krishna conscious. And in fact, I heard one devotee, Ramakali Prabhu. He was one of the pioneers in the African preaching. He was in Nairobi, he was in Cote d'Ivoire. He came to Ghana shortly, briefly. On the day he disappeared, Sikhi Mahiti Prabhu was telling us the story that he was lying there, and then he started looking in one direction. He started staring in one direction, and that day happened to be the appearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So this devotee, he was staring in one direction, and all of a sudden he shouted, "Oh, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you are here." And those were his last words. In other words, it was concluded that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared at the bedside of Ramakali Prabhu and took him away because he had sacrificed his life in preaching in Africa. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur came to him at the moment of death, and he saw him. He was staring at him, and then he screamed, "Oh, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you are here." And he left his body. So there are also instances of many devotees, like Ranad Vali Matuji in what is this place? Ireland. He also lived in a very blissful, ecstatic manner. She was suffering from brain cancer, but she lived in a very glorious manner, very exemplary manner. So it is possible to rise above this pain. Some devotees they've risen above this pain. They have experienced bliss at the moment of death. So we just need to increase our Krishna consciousness more and more and more. And at the moment of death, we may transcend it without pain. It's possible. I don't know whether this answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. Ishara Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Yeah, just before I go to bed, it's after 10 o'clock here.
Yeah, it's after 10 o'clock at night.
So this question which you just asked regarding the question of death, the painful that living entities undergo before dying. Actually, Lord Brahma is not in charge of that. He did not create the pain of death. He created the material world, the engineer, but in terms of how someone lives, the circumstances, he has nothing to do with that. Even when, just like when Adam Muni, when he was traveling to many devotees, he was going to many planets. And then he saw the devotion of Lord Brahma, and then he was praising Lord Brahma, that, oh, my dear, and of course, Lord Brahma happened to be his father. He said, oh, my dear Lord Brahma, my dear father, that you are the recipient of the Lord's mercy because you are fully engaged in devotional service of the Lord. So Lord Brahma immediately replied to him that, I'm in this position that I'm afraid of death myself. I'm afraid of death because everyone has to die in the material world. This material world is material loka, is a place of death. No one is exempt from that. So he didn't create death. As a matter of fact, Krishna said, time I am, destroyer of all beings. Krishna said that in Bhagavad Gita. So death and dying is actually is another manifestation of the Lord. It is not. It's nothing to do with Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma created the body. He created material, whatever he created. He put all the elements together and make the body. And that's why the gopis, they were criticizing that he has made this eye that blinks, so they cannot see Krishna continuously. Now as Srila Prabhu was saying, that there are many yogis who don't experience pain at the time of death. Many yogis, and also there are many yogis who have overcome death. Many yogis, they overcome death. Even though they live in material world, they can decide if they want to die or not to die. Even we have the case of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev could decide when to leave his body. So which means they've overcome. Actually, there's one of the yogis, there are 8 mystic perfections. I forgot the name of it. I think come out last. And one of the 8 mystic perfections that one can overcome death. One can rise above death. One of the 8 mystic perfections. So which means when to leave this world, because a person can decide to be in the world according to their own choosing. Just like there was one time when Sankaracharya, he was preaching to one king. So he was preaching to one king about the nature of material world, that this material world is a place of misery, especially if you're a grester. Yes, it's a place of misery. And then the king said that, well, my dear Sankaracharya, how can you say you are not a grester? You've not experienced what goes on in the outside of life because you're a sannyasi. So how can you tell the problem that a grester life is facing? So how can you preach about that? So Sankaracharya said, the reason is, oh, actually you are right. He said, yeah, if I don't have experience of something, how can I preach it? So therefore I must experience it. So what happens is that then he saw a dead person, somebody that just died, and they are carrying the body to the cremation ground. So immediately Sankaracharya he went to enter that body, and that body came alive again. And then that body is actually Sankaracharya who has entered that body, and then he was, he went to experience outside of life. When after realizing all the pains and all that, then he came back again in the form of Sankaracharya, and then went back to the king and said, yes, now I've experienced it. That yes, outside of life is terrible because I've experienced it. So therefore, there are people that can, that can go over and beyond these things, these limitations of material nature, what has given. So therefore, not everyone can experience the pain of death. And of course, as the Bhagavatam explains, if you read the 5th canto, it explains the transferring of one body to another body, like that. So, and of course, when we see the pure devotees, experience some sickness, some pain, apparent pain when they are going. Of course, it has to do basically because, especially when they take so many disciples, and disciples, who have committed so many sinful activities, and they take so many disciples. So therefore, they experience some pain, but that pain is not that they're actually experiencing it, because after all, they're always in the hands of Krishna, and devotees in the hands of Krishna. Krishna will never allow his devotees to suffer. But those devotees, they just show us that yes, in the material world, everyone, there is birth, death, old age, and disease. It is there for everyone. So they just do that by teaching that yes, we should not make permanent arrangement for being in this material world. So therefore, we shouldn't see it that way. Lord Brahma is not in charge of death, but in terms of pain that explains that time. No, he has not, because himself he has to die. So how can he be in charge of something that he himself, he has to die himself? But of course, his death is different because at the end of creation, at the end of universal creation, Lord Brahma and all the live into the all go, they all enter into the body of my Vishnu, like that. So anyway, I just hope this is enough.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. I also remember the story of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. The departure of Gaur Govinda Maharaj is also very exemplary.
Yeah.
When Gaur Govinda Maharaj was asked a question in Mayapur 1996, about the appearance of Lord Jagannath, and he began to describe the appearance of Lord Jagannath. His bliss increased, his ecstasy increased as he described, and it reached a point he could not speak anymore. He told the devotees, "Start kirtan. I cannot speak anymore."
I was there.
You were there, amazing. And that's how he left his body. Speaking Krishna consciousness, experiencing bliss of Krishna consciousness, that's how he left. So in that circumstance, we can see that he had overcome death. In that circumstance, we can see he entered into samadhi. In that circumstance, we can see that death means bliss. He actually demonstrated it. So there are devotees who rise above death. They experience bliss in the so-called painful situation. So I remember that very, very vividly, that Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he left this planet in a very blissful mood. And that's how he passed. So it's possible to rise above that. It's possible to enter into samadhi. It's possible. I think there are still some more hands. I don't know.
There are, I think, 2 hands up.
I think those are the last questions.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm checking out. It's 10:30. I have to wake up for Mangalati. So
Yes,
thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your association.
But what Ishwara Prabhu was saying is absolutely true, but at the same time, what I was saying is true also. That is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. And I said I was almost quick to reprimand Lord Brahma, and I did not. And the reason I did not is that because I also understood that whatever is doing is what has been sanctioned by the Supreme Lord.
Yep.
But we cannot also overlook the fact that he is the creator. Otherwise, we'll throw everybody aside and just concentrate on Krishna, that Krishna is the doer of everything. Of course, Krishna is the doer of everything. We have the rain of God, the God of rain. We have the God of the sun. We have the God of the wind. We cannot overlook them. They are there, but they are working under the instructions of the Supreme Lord. And so everyone has the right to hold those who are directly involved in any particular facility responsible for doing or not doing what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing. Just as I think it was, excuse me, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, who shared a story that somebody was about to die, and the Yamadutas who were coming for his body, they realized that they got the wrong person. And they left him alone. He did not die. And Krishna says that for all living entities to make a mistake is possible. And so it is also possible that even these demigods, as powerful as they are, they may also make mistake at some point. And so just last week, Friday, we attended a celebration of life of one of our god brothers, Murari Gupta. He was in charge of Gurudev Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj's book publication, Harinam Press. And the way he passed is so beautiful. He wasn't sick. He was himself. He felt weak and decided to go lay on the bed. And the wife felt that the room was a little colder than usual, so she was trying to figure out how to turn on the thermostat. And then when she went to the room, she realized that the husband was like having some sort of mucus in his throat. So he felt his cold. She covered him with a blanket. And then again, she realized that his breathing was becoming much faster. So she just laid by his side and started chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And the husband also responded by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And then he stopped chanting. That was the end. How beautiful is that? I mean, if Lord Brahma allows us to leave our bodies this way, who am I, or who will at any point ask him questions? But for someone to lay in bed, going through so much excruciating pains, and I mean, Prabhuji, you were saying, and the Shara Prabhu was also saying that the pure devotees, they do not feel these pains. They do not feel it because, this is my understanding, they do not feel it because of so much love they have for Krishna, but they feel it. And if devotees begin to think that the pure devotees do not feel whatever
Hold
pain
that parking space till I get back from work.
then
This one?
Just stay where you're there. Stay
All
there.
right.
till I get back.
then what is so strange if I commit offense and the guru is suffering? After all, he's not feeling it. So this in some way will give license to some devotees to act whimsically, because even though the spiritual master is absorbing the sinful reactions and the actions of the disciples, when the disciple now thinks that after all, my spiritual master is not suffering, then what will prompt them to stop their sinning? And so the spiritual master, they go through suffering, they have the pain, but because of so much love they have for Krishna, they endure it. That is my understanding. I think Mitravinda has something to ask. I don't know if Prabhu have something to say. Otherwise, Mitravinda, you may unmute and ask your question.
Any other questions?
Mitravinda, you may unmute.
Chakra Prabhu is.
We'll go to Chakra Prabhu. You may unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam. All glories to you. All glories to Gurudev and all glories to Prabhupada. Yeah, thank you for your class as usual. Like I said, when you bring us this information, it brings us back to life. So thank you very much.
Mercy, mercy.
Yeah, what I was going to say concerning the question that Sir was asking, well, for Prabhupada, I don't know, but for Srila Krishna Prabhupada, in his book, Die Before Dying, he said he has taught us how to live, and he was as well going to teach us how to die. So definitely, we know some of us devotees, maybe we might go through some serious, like pain whilst we are dying, but the Guru's duty is to teach us how to go through it and still be able to remember Krishna. So I think in that book, Srila Krishna was trying to let us know that he's teaching us how to die. And based on that, I also concluded that maybe Srila Prabhupada was also trying to teach us how to die. That it's not easy, that we are going to go through a difficult, but Krishna consciousness is such that even though when we are going through this situation, then maybe we may look up to what the Guru went through and take solace from there. That, well, even if I'm in this situation, I'm still supposed to be trying as much as I can to be able to remember Krishna so that I can fulfill the goal of my life. So this is just the little that I wanted to chip in. That for Krishna Prabhu, I know that he said he was teaching us how, he has already taught us how to live, and now he's going to teach us how to die. And so that book, his book, Die Before Dying, he deeply explained the whole process of dying. So thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's a beautiful contribution. Actually, Srila Prabhupada's disappearance is also said to be the last lesson. Srila Prabhupada's disappearance is described as his last lesson. So yes, they demonstrate how to live this world amidst the challenging situation at the time of death. So yes, I agree. Any other comment, question? Otherwise,
Srimad Prabhu, you have something to share before we close, please?
Hare Krishna. Dandava Pranam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Glories to the assembled devotees. Actually, I came in a little bit late, and because there is a death in our community here of a very important person. So listening to the class is just trying to fix things together, put it in place. So a very important person in the community, very healthy, wealthy, very rich. He has a pranic healing organization where they heal people. And just all of a sudden, I saw him on Sunday, the 1st of January, and which I was at his house to greet him and his family. We chatted for a while. And I said, I thought you have traveled. And he said, no, I'm about to travel. I will travel later on. And only to hear that he died. And his brother told me, yes, he planned to go to Manila in Philippines on Saturday. That the same day he died. He canceled the flight because he wasn't feeling very good. And just had a cardiac arrest and he died. I mean, it's very shocking to people, to everybody. So anyway, even though we say we are learning how to die, but death itself is teaching us a lot of things every day, that we should not take things for granted and don't be too comfortable because you can go. I mean, this guy, he's even the one supporting another Indian guy who has been so sick for about 2 years, and he has become so bankrupt that he could not even pay his rent. This is the guy paying his rent. This is the guy supporting him. And he died before the guy who's been so sick for almost 2 years. Can you imagine? Huh? He's supporting somebody who's been sick for almost 2 years, bankrupt, couldn't get out of the house, nothing. And this man is paying his rent. He's so okay, wealthy, healthy, everything. And suddenly he died. And the guy is supporting, he's still lying down there. It's such a situation. We cannot understand how Krishna does things. So anyway, I think it makes us humble to realize that life is so short, and we can just quit at the stage at any time. So the opportunity we have, we take advantage of that. Hearing Bhagavatam like Advaita Krishna, Advaita Krishna Prabhu, appreciating this forum to make us to hear Bhagavatam from time to time. This is the opportunity we have, and we thank SRIVAS Prabhu for his nice class, and all the devotees who give class here to remind us about our primary duty, which is to remember Krishna every time, 24 hours. So thank you all, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say something. Tomorrow I may not be in class because we are doing the cremation tomorrow. I've been busy throughout the day, running around for many things to help the family. Tomorrow, going to be also busy likewise. So I may not even be in the class tomorrow. Okay, Prabhuji, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So I will request that we chant one full Mahamantra for Mr. Kumar Samnani, who was such a wonderful devotee, wonderful supporter of Krishna consciousness in Togo. And all of a sudden he has left us. So let us remember him, remember his services. And let us pray to Lord Krishna to offer him a wonderful place a wonderful destination. He has done his best for supporting the preaching in Togo. Actually, I mentioned his name at the beginning of the lecture.
Yes, yes. I was
Yes.
about to say that Srimad Prabhu, you said you came in late, but His Grace Srivas VANACARI had actually talked about his magnanimity and benevolence and devotion earlier on. So
Very nice. Thank you very much for that.
So I'll request that we chant a full mantra for Mr. Kumar. I mean, Krishna, taken of his wonderful soul. So though there's a hand up somewhere, I've seen Mataji hand up.
yeah, that's Mitravinda Devi.
Okay.
Do we take a question before we do the japa?
Yes, because when we chant, we should close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mitravinda Devi, you may unmute, please.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to, I'm thinking, I'm more simply about Sahadev Prabhu's statement. And so what I was relating to was the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the suffering of others and how it's actually multifaceted. And so the little of what I know about his profession, I was more relating to his ability to have this empathy that's spiritual deeply, and how it actually connects to those who are leaving their bodies, but may not have this understanding that we have of the processes and connection to God. Although they may have it on different levels, and some may not have it all at all, because we never know the level that someone has a connection to Krishna when we're meeting them, or even when we're working with them. So I was just thinking about Lord Chaitanya's mercy and the compassion of Vaishnavas in being able to empathize deeply with the suffering of others on all levels, whether it's them leaving their body or struggling in some way. We're not robots. We're not supposed to be robots, but Sahadev Prabhu's deep connection with understanding that from a Krishna conscious perspective, and as being a human being, to not actually even be able to literally tolerate the suffering of anyone, Vaishnava or otherwise. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So I think at this point, we should chant the Mahamantra.
Yes, we're going to kindly request you all to unmute, and then in unison, collectively. It might not be unison because of being online, but we're going to try to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and then we in our hearts and in our minds, we also pray to Krishna to have a better place for this amazing devotee who's suddenly left our association. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Krishna.
Krishna, Hare
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 Rama, Hare
Rama
Rama,
Rama.
Hare Hare.
Jai. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha.
Sarvescha,
Kripa
Bhagavata
Sindhu
Scha,
Devi
Eva
Patanam Pavanebhyo
Pitanam
Vaishnavebhyo
Pavanabhyo
Namaha.
Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha.
Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Srivas VANACARI ki.
Jai.
Devi ki.
So